Stay connected, stay informed. 20 minutes of nonstop news continues on KOMO News 1000, FM 97.7.
Good afternoon, KOMO News Time 12:02. I'm Taylor Van Cise. Now our top stories from the KOMO 24/7 News Center. As of today, masks are required once again across Washington when going inside offices, stores, restaurants, or any other indoor public space. Internal medicine specialist Dr. Joshua Liu says that today's FDA full approval of the Pfizer vaccine will help.
In the coming months, there will be many Americans that have an option to get that third shot. They'll be reassessing that decision. And that's a different decision.
The statewide mandate comes as vaccination rates slow across Washington. There's been noticeable pushback from unions and state workers over the governor's mandate to make them all get vaccinated or lose their jobs. KOMO's Brian Calvert has the latest.
Last week, state ferry managers had to figure out how to cover what it called an unprecedented 91 requests for relief workers. And now a mandate to vaccinate may cause this more often, as ferry officials say they can't hire fast enough. The 45,000-member Washington Federation of State Employees is also complaining, and teachers aren't happy either about being made to vaccinate. This teacher gets the frustration, however,
I think it's our job as the adults to protect our kids.
I don't think that this is anything extraordinary. It's just extra political.
Whitman College professor Elizabeth Krause tells KXLY.
Yes, medical freedom is important. Personal freedom is important. But our personal freedoms end at the place where they endanger others.
For example, she says you can drink all the alcohol you want, but once you make the choice to drive, your freedom ends. Brian Calvert, KOMO News.
A COVID outbreak at the Pierce County Jail has sent a third of the inmates into isolation, and jail staff is now limiting bookings. 35 inmates have tested positive so far. The chief of Pierce County's Corrections Bureau says that in an email yesterday to all police chiefs in the county, explaining that they're only taking bookings for violent crimes right now. They will refuse any prisoner showing symptoms of the virus. The flu was just about non-existent last year, but now with kids headed back into the classroom, local doctors are concerned that it may come back.
Last year, we had a historically low respiratory viral season in the United States. So, there was one case of one death due to flu in pediatrics reported to CDC last year, which is compared to now I think up to 600 total coronavirus deaths in pediatrics.
That's Dr. Mary Fairchalk at Tacoma's Mary Bridge Children's Hospital, concerned that respiratory viruses will spread through schools, and if a kid gets sick with more than one, including COVID, it could be very serious. She advises all students and staff to stay masked up and distanced, and to continue constant cleaning and hand washing, both at school and at home. KOMO News Time 12:04. Time for a traffic update from the Dubin Law Group Traffic Center. Here's Marina Rockinger.
Hi, Taylor. So there was a collision southbound I-5 at 405 in the South Center area, but it was reported as blocking in 3 right lanes. Now it looks like it is blocking 2 right lanes. So the situation is quickly changing, but know that that's in the South Center area and things are going to quickly back up. And then in that same South Center area, eastbound Highway 518 at northbound 405, we have a collision partially blocking the right lane. Southbound I-5 is pretty slow from Northgate into downtown Seattle. It's tough southbound I-5 into the 5 curve from the Pierce County line down to the Puyallup River. Northbound I-5 will be slow as well from Yakima Avenue up to the Puyallup River. Next, KOMO traffic at 12:14.
Our KOMO forecast now. Temperatures are going to feel pretty nice this week, actually. Here's Kristen.
Cool sunshine today as highs stay in the 60s for a few spots in the interior lowlands. For the Cascade Mountains, maintaining some semblance of clouds and maybe a few sprinkles in the far northern Cascades this afternoon. Otherwise, a dry afternoon evening commute up and down the I-5 corridor. And then warming up by Tuesday and Wednesday. We are back well into the 70s both afternoons. That's closer to normal here for late August. But then as we look forward to Thursday and Friday, the cooling clouds, they are back, and so is the chance of light showers both days. So that's going to be our next chance of any meaningful rain late this week. And the KOMO Weather Center meteorologist Kristen Clark.
Cloud cover starting to clear out. Not too bad right now in Seattle. It's 62 degrees. KOMO News Time 12:06. A shelter-in-place advisory has been lifted in Puyallup, but the cold storage facility that caught fire early Saturday morning is still smoldering. Washington Cold Storage is on 15th Street Southeast. It's a total loss, but there were no injuries reported. A refrigeration chemical used at the facility created toxic smoke, so people who lived nearby were initially evacuated and then told to keep windows and doors closed in their homes. Cameron Fian lives nearby.
The smell is pretty strong, which seems to be bothering some people, and it seems to be kind of bothering their eyes and causing some dryness in the eyes, making them water.
Investigators hope to get inside the burned-out building today to see if they can figure out how the fire started. Local families being asked to host and sponsor Afghan refugees that arrive in the U.S. KOMO's Suzanne Fon reports that Vietnamese refugees who resettled in Washington after the fall of Saigon in 1975 are stepping up to help.
Jeffrey Vu is a Boeing engineer.
My family came in 1975 as part of the first wave of refugees.
He signed on to volunteer.
I volunteered to host a family and volunteered my apartment, actually.
Vu explains why he wants to give back.
They took a chance on us. I think we should take a chance, give the next wave of folks a chance too. Because we were able to, achieve so much and we had so much opportunity from all the help we received.
Here's how anyone can help. Go to the Afghan Health Initiative website. People can fill out a form to be added to the list of potential host families. If you want to learn how Vietnamese Americans can help, go to the Facebook page, facebook.com/Viet4Afghans.
It's really, I think, our moment to pay it forward.
And the Viet4Afghans group says they've had about 24 families sign up so far.
KOMO's Suzanne Fon reporting. Many refugee families from Afghanistan already live in the Seattle area. KOMO's Kara Kostanich has the story of one family that's stepping up to help another Afghan family in need.
For Mohib, whose last name we're not sharing for his family's safety back in Afghanistan. He says he's grateful to have a temporary home for his wife and 6 children.
It was hard, it was very hard. Just I lifted everything for there. My family, my business, my house.
Mohib was a translator for the United States and United Nations in Afghanistan before opening his own clothing store in Kabul, an entire life that just days ago he left behind.
Life is very important, so I didn't feel good over there, so that's why I left it. My country.
Mohib is one of 14 Afghan families that Jewish Family Service has helped resettle right here in the Seattle area.
KOMO's Kara Kostanich. Blood supplies in the Northwest are now at their lowest level in more than a decade, prompting another urgent call for donors. That story from KOMO's Greg Hersholt.
Bloodworks Northwest, which supplies blood products to over 90 hospitals in the Pacific Northwest, says the combination of low supply and declining donations is forcing them to cut back on the amount of blood they can provide to hospitals, from the Canadian border to Southern Oregon. And the impact?
A patient who maybe had surgery and their hemoglobin's low, they need to get a transfusion, or a chemotherapy patient who needs to get a transfusion, they might be able to wait in the hospital and get it the next day. Certainly that's not the best of care.
Vicki Fenson is Executive Vice President of Bloodworks, and she says donations usually drop in the summer, but donor hesitancy during the pandemic has worsened that trend. They're asking those who are eligible to schedule a donation at one of their many pop-up sites around the region, and you can find the one closest to you at bloodworksnw.org. Greg Hersholt, KOMO News.
KOMO News time, 12:10. It's time for an update on sports from the Beacon Plumbing Sports Desk. Here's Eric Hines.
Ty France tied the game with a solo home run in the 9th inning and put the Mariners on top with an RBI single in the 11th before Kyle Seager belted a 3-run homer and a 6-3 win over the Astros on Sunday. It was France's 5th home run this month.
I think the power's kind of always been there, except for that little stretch that I had where I was trying to play through the wrist injury. But for me, it's just being 100% healthy, and the power's in there. It just like you said, getting comfortable in the box and getting good pitches to drive.
The M's are 3 games out of the last AL wildcard spot as they head to Oakland today for a 2-game series with the A's. First pitch is 6:40. Brianna Stewart had 20 points, 12 rebounds, and 5 blocks as the Storm used a late run to beat the Washington Mystics Sunday 85-78. The win improves the Storm to 18-7. Bad news for the Seahawks. Linebacker Ben Burr-Kirven tore an ACL during the preseason loss to Denver Saturday night. He's expected to be put on the injured reserve and out for the season. Also, wide receiver John Ursua suffered a knee injury and is expected to miss the regular season as well. And the Sounders scored 2 late goals to beat Columbus 2-1 Saturday afternoon. Sports at 10 and 40 minutes past the hour. I'm Eric Hines, KOMO News.
For what it's worth, I'm Brian Clark. For the past several months, Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine had been administered under emergency use authorization following a thorough review of the data and clinical trials. But now that the FDA has given its full approval to Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine, this could open the door for more vaccine requirements.
One is you may see more people coming forward, those who perhaps were on the fence about getting vaccinated, and this may tip them toward doing so. But second, I think you'll see more universities and workplaces that were considering putting in requirements for vaccines to create safer places to learn and work.
That's Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy on ABC's This Week. He also says there was even more data available to regulators, which allowed them to come to this decision.
It's actually unusual for an application for full approval to be submitted with this much experience, with hundreds of millions of people having received the doses.
More than 200 million Pfizer shots have been administered in the U.S. so far. For what it's worth, Brian Clark, ABC News.
Now that the Pfizer vaccine against COVID has won the FDA approval, members of the military will have to line up for their shots.
Now that the vaccine has the FDA's full authorization, the Pentagon will require that all service members get the shot.
The department is prepared to issue updated guidance requiring all service members to be vaccinated. A timeline for vaccination completion will be provided in the coming days.
Pentagon spokesman Admiral John Kirby, the Secretary of Defense, said earlier this month he would issue a mandate, but is moving up that timeline now that the FDA said the vaccine is safe. I'm Rory O'Neill.
If you want to go to work, should you be required to get the vaccine? Daria Albinger reports that one group says yes.
A majority of respondents to a new survey say COVID-19 vaccine should be required as workplaces reopen.
79% of the survey participants said that they favor employers requiring employees to be vaccinated before they return to the workplace.
Ken Simonson with the National Association for Business Economics.
It's quite interesting. Such a high percentage thinks that employers should require vaccination, even when a minority are doing so now.
Only a quarter of respondents say that's the policy in their workplaces. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
A new warning out from the CDC urging many Americans to avoid cruising again because of outbreaks of COVID-19. This is despite vaccination requirements. ABC's Alex Stone reports.
Vaccinated or not, the CDC warning if you're an older adult, if you're overweight, recently pregnant, or have underlying health conditions, that you should avoid cruising right now, whether it be on a big ship or on a river cruise. Larry Richmond is canceling his cruise.
The ocean will still be there, in 6 months. And I'll wait. And at some point, it will be fun again. And that's when I'll go.
The CDC says anyone who does go on a cruise should get tested for COVID before and after their trip. Alex Stone, ABC News.
KOMO News Time, 12:14. Time for a traffic update from the Dubin Law Group Traffic Center and Marina Rockinger.
Well, it's getting tough now if you're trying to get to South Center on southbound I-5 because we have a collision blocking 3 right lanes. So it was 3 right lanes, then it was 2, now it's 3 again. So that is causing a backup as you come out of the Duwamish curves. We also have eastbound 518 in that same South Center area, a collision partially blocking the right lane at northbound 405. Southbound 405, just south of State Route 522, so up in the Bothell area, disabled vehicle blocking the toll lane. Southbound I-5 at Northgate is now bumper-to-bumper traffic into Seattle. We have at Gravelly Lake Drive, southbound I-5, the right lane blocked at JBLM. Your next KOMO traffic at 1224.
Our KOMO forecast now, and I want to talk about the next weekend. I know it's not for another several days, but Saturday and Sunday look to be really nice with temperatures back in the mid to upper 70s. Until we get to this upcoming weekend, we're going to be hovering right around 70 for our daytime highs today through Friday. A slight chance of showers Thursday and Friday. Right now in Seattle, we have mostly sunny skies, and it's 62 degrees at KOMO.
Stay connected. Stay informed. The Northwest's only 24-hour news station. KOMO News 1000, FM 97.7.
Bill O'Neill at the editor's desk. I'm Taylor Van Cise. Now the headlines we're following from the KOMO 24/7 News Center. A new poll shows that most Americans support coronavirus mandates. This coming as President Biden urges all Americans to roll up their sleeves after the FDA's full approval of Pfizer's coronavirus vaccine. And the Pentagon says that as of today, they've evacuated 42,000 people from Afghanistan since the end of July up until this past weekend, the last full weekend here in the month of August, or next to last, I should say. And it looks like there could be more toll lanes on 405. An environmental review gives the green light to new express toll lanes. The State Transportation Department saying that the project will have no significant environmental impact. The project will add a new toll lane each direction of 405 between Linwood and Bothell. It's not expected to be completed, though, until 2027. KOMO News Time, 12:16. In the wake of George Floyd's murder, there were big promises made by corporations to confront systemic racism, so have those promises been fulfilled? Tracy Jan covers race and the economy for the Washington Post and joins us on the KOMO Newsline. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
JP Morgan Chase, Apple, Pfizer, so many more titans of industry come up in this new analysis. How much money did America's biggest companies put toward solving racial inequality?
In all, they put together $49.5 billion in terms of external financial commitments towards racial justice. But that big number is misleading because 90% of it is actually loans and investments that will take quite a bit of time to come to fruition, up to a decade in some cases.
So as for the kind of instant cash that came out of it, where did all that money go?
Of the $4.2 billion in grants that were committed, and that's still going to take as much as a decade to disperse, the vast majority of it was towards economic equality. $2.1 billion was economic equality. Most of that is going towards focusing on the racial wealth gap. A big portion of that amount went towards education, a lot of donations to historically black colleges and universities. And then there was some amount towards health, increasing racial health equity, COVID testing on HBCU campuses, et cetera. A surprising finding of ours is that even though it was George Floyd's murder that triggered all of the protests around the world and triggered a lot of these corporate promises, only a very small amount was committed towards criminal justice. $71 million of the $4.2 billion in donations were focusing on criminal justice. And that's including, mass incarceration reform, police reform. So that was surprising to us, given the impetus of the pledges.
And that word pledge comes up a number of times in your analysis. There isn't one entity that can say, hey, JP Morgan Chase, you actually owe us a little bit more money for this effort.
Right. This is, again, corporate pledges. They obviously don't have to do these things. A lot of them got big PR bounces out of making these pledges last summer. There's no one tracking what happens, and they're not required to report on where their philanthropy or their loans and investments have gone. When I was talking earlier about 90% of the money being in the form of loans and investments towards closing the racial wealth gap, the vast majority is actually pledged by JP Morgan Chase and Bank of America, two of the largest banks in the country. And most of that is going towards increasing black home ownership, so mortgage loans for black borrowers.
When we reach a decade out or whatever the case is for all of these efforts to come to fruition, how do we measure if any change has come from this corporate spending?
That's an excellent question. And there are statistics that show the racial wealth gap. We can see whether that's closing. We can see whether the black home ownership gap has closed at all. It hasn't in the last 50 years since the Fair Housing Act was passed in 1968. And in Minneapolis especially, it has the widest gap between black and white home ownership in the country. There's a 50 percentage point gap. So we could see the statistics on whether any of that has closed. Granted, these banks can only do so much, but critics are saying that in addition to offering loans or committing loans to black families, they should be examining their lending practices and looking internally about whether there's any racial bias in terms of credit scoring or any other factors that go into determining whether someone is eligible for a loan.
Tracy Jan with us on KOMO News, covering race and economy for the Washington Post. And you can find this full analysis, worth the dive, online at WashingtonPost.com. Tracy, thank you.
Thank you so much.
KOMO News Time 12:20. Now our Propel Insurance business update from Jim Chesko.
Sales of previously owned homes in July were stronger than expected. Figures from the National Association of Realtors showed that sales rose 2% from the previous month and were up 1.5% from a year earlier. Many homeowners have been putting their homes on the market as selling prices continue to rise. The median existing home price last month was just under $360,000, up nearly 18% from a year ago. The typical home sold in July had been on the market just 17 days. If you think flying is a headache these days, imagine what flight attendants think. A recent survey of 5,000 of them found 85% had to deal with misbehaving passengers. 1 in 5 experienced a physical incident. The president of the Association of Flight Attendants, CWA, says it's the most hostile environment her group has ever faced. That's your money now.
The market's reacting positively today to news of the FDA approval of the Pfizer vaccine. The Dow up 260 points, the Nasdaq up 229, and the S&P 500 higher by about 1%. Money news at 20 and 50 past the hour. Traffic is next.
Stay connected. Stay informed on all things COVID 24/7. Breaking news as it happens from KOMO News 1000, FM 97.7, and on your smart speaker. This is KOMO News.